I'm a guy that's 24. Each day I build some more. I like episode 7 and episode 8. I'm Rich Boy J. Hello boyos, Rich Boy J here, back in with another video, and I am extremely excited to show you all my new and improved minifigure scale Razor Crest from The Mandalorian. First off, I want to say that if you would like to build one of these on your own, the instructions are available for $30 US. They are full PDF step-by-step instructions. If you'd like them, go to the description or the pinned comment in this video, shoot me an email, and we'll handle the transaction there. The Razor Crest is freaking awesome, and I don't think too many people are going to disagree with that. It's a Republic-era gunship that bears some design similarities to other gunships we've seen in Star Wars canon, but this particular gunship is pretty special. The moment I saw this first unveiled during the Star Wars Celebration panel, I knew I was going to build one. I actually designed the first version of this model before the show even premiered. I had a video ready to go showcasing it the day the first episode dropped. This was an extremely timely decision. That video did pretty well, but that also meant that there were a lot of inaccuracies with the original model. There just wasn't very much reference material to go off of, and hardly any interior shots of the ship. I'm sure you can also imagine how my heart sank when we saw Jawas rip the entire ship apart in the second episode. Imagine doing all that work on a ship that was only going to appear in 1.5 episodes. Fortunately, Mando got the ship put back together. I have spent countless hours scouring over reference material trying to make this the best possible model it can be. I've been going through the internet trying to find as many detailed pictures as possible, freeze frames from the actual show, just anything to make sure that this model was as detailed as possible. I ended up adding over 1,000 pieces to it. It has better angles now, it has more lights, it has more detail, and better proportions. So let's dig right into the ship. The first modification I made was to the landing gear of this Razor Crest. For one, it's actually functional now. The landing gear actually holds up the entire ship. Before, it was necessary to have some trans clear bricks right there to hold the thing up, but now the landing gear is actually functional, which was quite a feat to figure out. I ended up going with a pretty simple solution that I'm pretty happy with. One of the things I actually had to consider when working on these landing gears was they had to be removable because this thing is able to be put on a stand. So I wanted to ensure that if you did want to have it on the stand, it wasn't an extreme hassle to get the landing gears off of this vehicle. And it ended up working pretty well. A few other things I did to modify this was I actually added these two flaps right here on the top and the bottom. Before, the angles were just wrong on them, but I made those a little bit more accurate. Another thing is I actually elongated the landing gears going towards the back. This was one of those things that I just didn't have good reference material for before the show started, but now that we've gotten just so many photos and even a really good fan-made cross-section of the Razor Crest, I was able to update that pretty well. And the front does also represent that change, and I was also able to get some more detail on that front landing gear because it's actually not exact to the back one. The next thing I want to talk about are the proportions and the angles on this newly updated Razor Crest. On the first model I had, the back section was just completely wrong. The angle for this slope right here was far too steep. It actually cut off like right there, pretty much. It was a 45-degree angle, and that meant that the back section just wasn't long enough. It didn't come out far enough. Like a lot of the shots I see of the Razor Crest from the top, you can see the part that basically extends from, you know, where that front half of the wings goes out is actually a bit shorter than the back section, and that was definitely not the case with my original model. So updating that was really one of the most important things for me with this model and making it look as best as possible. And I was able to achieve that. I think that now the side profile view looks so much better. It looks like a much more better proportioned ship. Another important thing I did was I actually increased the slant of the cockpit. Before, it was basically a brick lower on that side, so there wasn't a huge slant. And while there isn't a super steep incline here for the actual model, the one that I had before just wasn't making the cut. So I increased that to make it look better. That also meant I had to raise the engines section right here to kind of match with the more steep incline there, and I think it looks much better because of that. Another thing I did to make this a more accurate Razor Crest was adding slopes to this bottom section on the front. If you look at some reference material for the Razor Crest, you can see that there is absolutely a slant there, and my original model just didn't have that at all. So I think adding those slants just made the front look so much better than it did before. It just looks really nice. I just love the way that looks, especially since it's something on the front of the ship, something that you see pretty often. Having that bottom section finished off in a more detailed manner works really well. I did also add some length to the engines. I think I extended them 3 or 4 studs, which is much better. The original engines I had on this thing were a bit too stubby, so having the back section be extended meant that the engine should also be extended to kind of just help with the proportions of the ship, and actually like this look very much. The last thing in regards to the angles of this ship is that because this back section got extended, this slope basically changed dramatically from a 2x1 inverted slope to a 3x1 inverted slope. That meant that this door was going to need some changes, because before it was basically, you know, contouring to the shape of the 45-degree slopes. I actually made a few modifications to it, and it's a much better design now. Before, the door was actually attached to the base of the ship, and these walls were attached to a different section, which meant they didn't line up perfectly and it would get caught at certain points. And also, you were able to push it too far into the ship. That is not the case now. The door now is actually just attached to this entire section right here. So you can basically pull it down with ease, and it works out pretty well. It's a smooth mechanism, doesn't get caught or hung up or anything. And like I said, you can't push it too far into the ship, which is really something I should have just done in the first place. But I do like the way this looks now. I made a lot of updates to this ship in terms of just the details on it, making it as accurate as possible. First starting off with this section right here, just rounding off the top. That was just something I didn't have before for whatever reason, but now it's correct and it looks much better because of it. If we move further towards the back, we have what I think is probably my favorite change to this vehicle, and that is that there's actual detail in the intakes in the engine. Now, this isn't something you see super prominently with the ship, like this section is mostly hidden in shadows, but now that this detail is here, this has to be one of my favorite parts of this ship, because I just love the way this design came out. I'm using these horn pieces that are basically just clipped on to these exterior engine pieces right here, and they all are like at a slight slant, and they come together to make a really nice looking engine turbine intake. Like, I just love the way that came out, and it's on both engines obviously, and having this built makes me want to build more engines. I love the way this looks. The front of the engines got a facelift, and the back also did. I think that the original design I had for the back of these engines were cool, but they just weren't accurate. So I basically changed it to have these 1x4 tiles kind of extend and come together at the end. And if you compare this with the actual engines of the Razor Crest, this is so much more accurate, and I just love the way these all come together. It's a much better looking shape. Now we can make our way to the top of the ship. This is where a lot of updates happen, because I was able to get some decent reference material. First thing being on the front, these yellow stripes here actually extend up to the top. That just wasn't something I had before, but now they do, and I like that quite a bit. It looks good. I did use narrower wedge plates for the front section, just realizing this angle is more steep than this angle back here, so I wanted to have that represented by using different wedge plates. So you can probably tell if I zoom out, those angles are 2 different angles, and that's something that you'll notice if you look at the actual model. So was happy with that. Just added more details on this top section right here. I won't go through every individual thing I added, but you can just see the surface of this thing has so many more details and lines incorporated into it. One thing I was particularly happy with were these lines here. First and foremost, these here, there's like kind of like almost a circle pattern on the top of the Razor Crest. So that's really what I tried to recreate there. And then the circle basically gets stopped by these 2 45-degree lines on the sides of it. So I was happy to implement that. I made a few changes to the greebling section in here to make it a little bit more accurate. Nothing too much of note to talk about there. And now I want to show you guys the new interior details. I know this is a section that a lot of you are super excited to check out. And the first thing I want to say is the interior is just much more accessible now. Before, it was very difficult to get your hands into the ship, and I wanted to try to basically change that, make this thing a lot more accessible on the inside without compromising the actual structure of the vehicle, because it is so top heavy with those engines sitting up top. So first and foremost, there are still these doors right here that you can flip down, accurate to the shell. They have this second piece right here that represents the extension. And I actually added these little actuators right here that are actually accurate to the actual door. When it opens up, there are these just actuators right here that connect to the side. So I did that to make it a little bit more accurate. And the door is also on the other side, so you can open up the second one as well. The back door, of course, you can still open like I showed earlier. It comes down like this. And there is also the option, if you just want more space or just room to kind of get your hands in the ship, you can just take this entire section off. Comes off pretty easily, attaches pretty easily, just gives you a better look at the inside. But the biggest change I made to the Razor Crest in terms of accessing the inside is this door right here. This was basically on the other side of the ship at first, and I kind of initially went to a design where there was going to be a door on both sides, and I decided, why not just make one big door? That way one side can have a bunch of details on the walls that I don't have to mess with, and then the other side can have a door that just gives you more access to the inside. So if you pull this out, you notice first there's a net on the side, which is a nice little interior detail. I just threw some parts in there to give it a bit more detail, but you can see now there is just much more room to actually reach inside the ship. There's, you know, the air access through this door, through this much bigger hole, and you know, you can reach your fingers in there and kind of mess around with a lot of the interior details. And then of course you can access it through the back. So that was an important thing to me because the interior of this thing is so cool, and I wanted to just give a bit more playability for it. But this has to be the single most requested feature for the Razor Crest. It's kind of difficult to film, but it's the gun locker. The gun locker was shown in the first episode, and I think another episode after that, when, oh, I guess the Jawa episode when they steal his guns. But yeah, the gun locker is finally here. Ideally, it would actually be on the other side of the door right here. That's actually why I didn't incorporate it in the first place. But because of the battery pack being in the front, that meant that a lot of the stuff that would be right there had to get moved forward, like the bed and the toilet, or vac tube as they call it, which is actually in there. I can't really get a good view of it right now. But that meant that I had to basically sacrifice the gun locker. But enough people asked about it, and I just said, you know what, let's just add it. So the gun locker is in there. You can reach your finger in there and actually open these doors, and boom, you got yourself some guns. I love this section so much because it just ended up lining up very well with the light at the top. I love that, like, you can't really see the light when it's closed, but when you open it, it just illuminates this entire section right here. You can get an even better look at all of his weapons. So that was a really fun part to add to the mock. I know a lot of people are going to appreciate that addition, and you can also just close that up. It's super difficult to do this while holding the camera because I'm trying to have the camera as close as possible, but hopefully you guys can, you know, get at least a decent look at what's going on there. And then right next to it is the carbon freezing chamber section. This is basically built into the wall of the Razor Crest, and you can get a minifigure. I'll take a random minifigure here, like black-haired Kanan, and you basically sit him, I guess maybe not face first, but sit his back to the wall there. And then Mando would press his buttons on the side and turn this boy into a carbon frozen boy. There are actually clips on the floor of the ship. I can probably give you a better look on the back. So you can actually attach a few of these if you'd like. Just to give you a better look at the inside, here's what it looks like. And towards the back, you can still see the bed over there, and there's the vac tube, and then there's actually a ladder that goes up to the top section of the mock. Another really cool feature I was able to add to the Razor Crest, and I actually haven't seen this in any other Razor Crest mock, is the bottom hatch right here actually opens, and you can use your finger to slide it open and close. This was actually a feature of the ship showed off in that like Suicide Squad episode. They basically park the entire Razor Crest on the Republic ship, and then they open this hatch to basically gain access to the top of the ship, and that's how they're able to get into it. So it is actually a decently sized hatch too. Like, you can fit a minifig through there. If I take my black-haired Kanan, I can drop that boy through the bottom of the ship, and you can basically reenact that scene from the episode, which I thought was just a fun little feature to add to it, to just add even more accuracy to this model. Not much has really changed about the cockpit, but I did just want to show you can still remove the top window section, and then you have access to the cockpit. There's my custom Baby Yoda until the new one comes out. And then down through there, there's actually a ladder that goes to the first floor of the build. So I just wanted to quickly show you guys that. And finally, I actually turned the lights down in the room to show you this next feature. and that is the engines now light up. And this, if it weren't for the intakes on the front of the engines, I think this might be my favorite new addition to the Razor Crest. This is just so cool. This was something that I really wasn't planning on adding to it, but I just kind of tried it out. I was like, you know what, let me see if this might actually work. And it did, and it looks awesome. I love this so much. It has that distinct yellowish, orangish glow that the Razor Crest engines have, and it just looks so incredible. I especially love how it glows through the lines on the 1x4 tiles. Like, it's actually accurate. That's how it looks in the show. And I love this so much. Looking at this right now in this room that's not super brightly lit as I would do for a video like this, I just think it looks pretty incredible. And I want to give you guys a look at the front, which just shows off the two red lights on the front of the Razor Crest. So one of the things that I love so much about this build is the variety of ways you can display it. You can show it off like this with basically all the exterior panels removed and doors open, so you can get a good look at the interior. You can display it the normal way just to get a good look at the ship. Or you can display it like this, my personal favorite way, with it on its stand. There's just something so awesome about it sitting on the stand in flight mode with its engines just glowing in the dark. And that's going to finish up the video, guys. I hope you enjoyed taking a look at this new and improved Razor Crest build. As I mentioned earlier, the instructions are available for this, so if you'd like to purchase them, shoot me an email to the email in the description or pinned comment on this video. They are $30 US and our full step-by-step PDF instructions. In fact, what I'm actually going to do for you guys, this is going to be called the end of video special. The first 3 people to message me inquiring about these instructions and want to buy them, I'm going to give you a 33% discount, so they're going to be 20 bucks. Just mention that you watched all the way until the end of the video and you'll get that discount. So if you've been on the fence about building this model, I think this is the perfect time to pull the trigger, especially with all the new updates being added to it. The new instructions will reflect those, obviously, and you'll be able to have the most up-to-date version of the Razor Crest. But thanks to you all for watching. As I always say, if you like what I do, go ahead and support the video by hitting the like button, support the channel by smashing that subscribe button, and I'll be back again very soon.